A season takes its shape before our eyes. What have we seen? What does it mean? We've seen plenty already, but not nearly enough. Where you win, when you lose, how you play, who you beat. From the unranked and overlooked, to the overwhelming and almighty, to the surprising and the expected. Where are we? Behind locked doors, the committee weighs it all. Resumes are evaluated. Decisions are made. Who will be rewarded? Who will be exposed? Who will be in vogue, involved, invited? Who will be in?
There is the committee room, and this week, glad to report, all 13 members were there to cast their vote for the second edition of the College Football Playoff Top 25 rankings. Look at Tyrone Willingham in there. Got a glimpse of the Chairman Kirby Hocutt, who will join us live in just a little bit. Glad to have you with us. College Football Playoff Top 25. Remember, on this show, we don't see the rankings until you do.
You didn't get them?
Of course not. Joey Galloway's here, Booger McFarland, David Pollack. Maybe now's a good time to point out that last year with the second rankings, every team that made the playoff, in the top 5 at least, but over the 12 teams that have made the playoff, nearly half of them were not in the top 4 yet. So what are you most looking forward to seeing after Ohio State fell by the wayside this weekend?
It's all about the U. I mean, when you think about Miami last week, they were obviously sitting way back there behind a bunch of one-loss teams at number 10. They beat convincingly the number 13 team in the country. Do they go above TCU? How high do they climb? Do they go above Wisconsin, who's also undefeated?
You know, for me, it's got to be Oklahoma. Oklahoma went on the road to Stillwater, beat Oklahoma State.
They just scored again.
Yeah, exactly. Baker Mayfield put his name at the forefront of the Heisman Trophy. But when you give up 52 points, I just wonder how the College Football Playoff Committee is going to look at a team and say, can you be a top 4 team in the country and give up 52 points on defense? I can't wait to see how they position them this week.
You know, last year I pressed Kirby Hocutt on that on Selection Sunday, and he said their defense wasn't championship caliber.
Exactly.
What are you looking for?
There's not a whole lot to look for. I get it. Hey, look.
They're paying you to look for something,
I don't even know if the committee had to meet this week. They probably just phoned in. I don't know where that picture was from. because there was, seriously, I get Oklahoma, but,
yes.
I mean, they got TCU this week, so that actually doesn't matter a whole lot. Penn State, Ohio State, they got out the way. I do want to see if Iowa gets ranked, though.
Yes.
The way they looked against Ohio State, if they get ranked, at least Wisconsin can say we played a ranked team as they have Iowa this week at home.
I know it's not the be-all, end-all, but you brought this up last week. Maybe we ought to respect that 0 in the loss column, because the people that have the 0 in the loss column, they haven't lost to Iowa. They didn't lose to Syracuse. You know, a lot of these teams are finding ways to lose. Kirk Herbstreit's with us. Kirk, what are you most looking forward to finding out in this second edition of the rankings?
Joey having some insightful thoughts, I think, is probably the one thing I'm looking forward to.
Early shots.
Yeah, I guess Herb doesn't wear a tie for this show.
I guess Herb didn't get the memo.
Herb sticks with the no tie look.
Well, you said the committee didn't even have to meet this week. Come on, man. I mean, you gotta get excited about this stuff. I'm looking forward to how they handle Wisconsin and Miami, both unbeaten. Last week, there were, 6 one-loss teams ahead of them. 2 of those, of course, Penn State and Ohio State lost. Are they only going to move up above a couple spots, or are they going to maybe potentially move up a little bit further? In my opinion, both those teams had probably their best performances of the year. And does the committee weigh that heavily as they evaluate this week? As we know, it's the whole body of work from the beginning of the year all the way through. But both those teams definitely helped their cause. I just want to see how far they move up and which one's ahead of the other one. Is Miami ahead of Wisconsin or Wisconsin ahead of Miami? It's going to be interesting to see how they handle those two teams.
All right, let's get busy and look at some rankings then, guys, as we take a look at this week's college football playoff rankings brought to you by Goodyear, starting with team number 25, Northwestern, back in the mix, and probably significant for a couple of teams that LSU, North Carolina State, still hanging in the rankings as well.
Yeah, no doubt, especially for Alabama, having beat LSU. You want that top 25 win on your resume. Auburn also at the end of the year.
Notre Dame, obviously, and Clemson both beat NC State as well.
So there you go. So NC State still hanging after a 7-point loss at Clemson. Looking at teams 16 through 20, Mississippi State still at 16. They play Alabama this week. I think it's noteworthy, too, that UCF, what do you think about that, at 18? We've never had a group of 5 team ranked higher than 20th in the second rankings until now. So Scott Frost's team sitting at 18.
And look at Iowa. Wisconsin has to be celebrating right
Yeah,
now.
you're right, they do.
This is the best news for Wisconsin that they could have possibly gotten.
I disagree, though, because they beat Ohio State, which was going to be their signature win down the road.
And if they beat them, they're going to knock them back out.
Exactly. Wisconsin plays out.
But still, it eliminates the conversation that Wisconsin does not have a ranked team on their schedule.
But it has to be there at the end of the season, not right now.
Well, they give them credit for when they beat them.
They do. They try to do that as best they can. The biggest thing I think you look at, we'll get to Wisconsin in a minute, that strength of schedule is barely in the top 75. His strength of record, despite being undefeated, is just in the top 8. All right, we've got 16 through 20. Let's go up now and look at the teams who've made it into the top 15. Suddenly surging Michigan State sitting at 12. Ohio State and Penn State tumbling all the way down to 13 and 14.
No doubt. Very interested to see who's going to be the highest 2-loss team in this situation. Right now you see Southern Cal there at number 11. Wonder where Auburn's going to be at.
Michigan State soared from 24 to 12 after that 3-hour delay for the Lightning and the Storms.
And Notre Dame is excited about that because Notre Dame, we're talking resume-wise, they won't have a championship game. They have USC and Michigan State that they beat both teams.
Yeah.
There's a couple of good wins for the Irish. Haven't seen a 2-loss Auburn yet. They're going to be the highest-ranked 2-loss team once we get into the top 10. Kirk, what's your reaction to what you've seen from 11 through 25 so far?
Well, it makes you that much more excited about what we're going to see up in the top 10. But it doesn't necessarily affect maybe who's in as far as the top 4. But the job that Mark D'Antonio has done this year with that football team, to think about where they were last year, even having a setback earlier this year, and the way they've been able to fight back, sitting there, controlling their own destiny to get to a Big Ten championship. And the same about Clay Helton. How about the amount of pressure that team had on them and that quarterback had on them? And it's almost as if they've stopped playing football after their loss in South Bend, and there they are, hovering all the way up into the top 11, still some games ahead of them, and of course getting into the Pac-12 championship, playing probably Washington. So SC is one of those teams just kind of hanging out there still on the fringe with 2 losses.
And that's getting a lot of respect to me for a SC team that we've seen look pretty bad this season at times. And so moving
But they have righted the ship. I mean, they have looked better the last several weeks, I feel like.
They still have the same issue with their quarterback turning the ball over.
Yeah, his decision-making is poor.
Yeah, that issue has not changed. And until that issue changes, USC is going to be trouble giving them a ton of respect. I'm surprised to see them that.
But here's the whole thing with the Pac-12 right now. Do you give them enough respect to have a shot at a playoff spot? If SC were a 2-loss Pac-12 champion, you have multiple 2-loss champions?
It would have helped, honestly, it would have helped if Stanford won last week. It would have helped Washington's chances.
Right.
I don't see the Pac-12 getting in.
Yeah,
I don't see a path unless a lot of teams lose ahead of them. But as long as teams like Stanford lose before Washington gets a chance at them, it hurts the entire conference.
The only thing I'll say about that is Washington State's the team that beat them. They get to play them. So, I mean, I don't think that necessarily matters that much when it comes to Washington, because Washington is going to face them. I do feel like one thing, too, we talk about injuries all the time and how the committee should look at them, and Kirby Hocutt mentioned Clemson and their quarterback situation. USC was beat to heck when they played Washington State. I mean, you're talking about a couple offensive linemen that didn't make the trip. USC was very, very dinged up. I do want to watch them the rest of the season. They'll have a shot at Washington, but I do feel like they're coming on as the end of the season.
Not forget the Notre Dame loss by 1 million.
By 1 million.
Exactly.
They lost by 1 million.
And a black eye to go home with. I mean, they got punched
It was
in
bad.
the mouth.
I'm not going to deny that.
It is tough to respect them until their quarterback, till Darnold plays better. It's tough to respect USC.
And I was not talking in respect to Washington, but as a 2-loss potential champion, which we could have multiple 2-loss champions. However, it is worth noting that we have 2 more teams, either undefeated or with 1 loss in the Power 5 conference, than we did at this time last year, and we still didn't get a 2-loss team into the playoff. All right, let's look at the top 10 now and see who is number 10, and it is Auburn. Auburn's got a great opportunity in front of them. Georgia this week, Alabama in a couple of weeks, and if they were to win those games, maybe another meeting with Georgia.
Auburn controls their own destiny. I mean, I think as a 2-loss team, if Auburn wins out and wins the SEC, I think Auburn will be in the college football playoff.
I'll say this. Auburn controls their fate better than Wisconsin does, based on what they have in front of them and based on the resume.
For sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of people don't want to hear that, but a 2-loss Auburn team has better control than Wisconsin with the 0 at the end of their record.
Is that the way it should be? Is that the way you see it?
Yes, because I think Auburn is a better football team than Wisconsin.
Okay, there you go.
Well, aren't you the one that talked about the 0 on the loss column last week and how?
No, he said how they would respond to it.
How they can respond to it. Sometimes people look at that 0 and they don't think highly of it.
Sometimes, but maybe you should.
Yes.
I mean, given what the teams we've seen, like Washington, for instance, they don't have a 0 in the loss column because they lost to a mediocre team against Arizona State. And here is your highest-ranked Pac-12 team. It's a long shot. I don't think the Pac-12's totally out of this yet.
No. Teams could lose. They're not
Right.
out. What I'm saying is there is not a team in the Pac-12 that controls their own destiny.
Correct.
No matter
I would
what
agree with
They need a lot of help.
They need help.
How about number 8? Ranked just ahead of the Huskies on Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin's got Iowa. They've got Michigan coming up. They've got the Big Ten championship game. Talked about whether that would be enough to get them into the 4.
And they got jumped by Miami.
Yep.
Well,
Wisconsin can't be exactly all that happy right now. They still
But
got that 0.
Wisconsin needs help.
And they got jumped.
They need help.
They still haven't. Again, the committee showed us they value wins. They still don't have a quality win,
Yeah.
so the committee's not going to give them any credit for that.
And again, sort of like we talked about with the Oklahoma-Ohio State argument a week ago that some of it would take care of itself
Yep.
with Oklahoma playing Oklahoma State.
Right.
Same deal with Miami. If Miami beats Notre Dame, then they've got another big-time quality win, and we don't have to have the discussion. And if they lose, then they'll fall behind.
Took care of itself.
That took care of itself. How about number 7? The U. One spot ahead. Thought they might sneak up a
The 6.
little bit
Yeah, I
higher
did
into
also.
6, but still a pretty good spot
Where
for them.
would they sneak to?
Ahead of TCU.
Exactly. Put them at number 6.
Yeah.
Oof, they're undefeated.
Yeah, well, but
Put it
again,
on
it
Virginia
goes
Tech.
it goes to what you said.
Right.
Yeah.
These two teams, we're going to find out this weekend
Exactly.
what they do.
Okay, we've seen it all the way up to number 7. Kirk, what do you think about what you've seen so far? Any issues with where teams are ranked right now?
I'm just thinking of Alvy's quote that we've been talking about all day. Barry Alvarez, the athletic director from Wisconsin, was pretty vocal coming out saying that he just can't imagine a team being able to get out of the Power 5 undefeated and not making it as a champion into the playoff. And looking at Wisconsin right now, I think Booger said it a little earlier, they're still in a position where they're going to need help. Booger even said, and I think a lot of people would agree, an Auburn team, because what they've done up to this point, and especially what's ahead of them, I just feel that people on the outside that watch these ranking shows and maybe still think computers are involved, they still think teams that qualify for this, if they win a Power 5 conference championship, and I think that that's why they get so frustrated and so emotional, because this isn't Little League where everybody gets a trophy. This is about putting the best 4 teams in. And if you think Wisconsin at the end of the dance is one of the best 4, no matter who they played, then put them in. But don't reward them just because they're undefeated. To me, that's silly.
You know, Kirby, here's the thing, Kurt, here's the thing that I've been looking at. If Notre Dame wins out, Bama or Georgia wins out, Clemson wins out, Oklahoma wins out, where are you putting Wisconsin at? Because in my opinion, they're not better than any of the teams that I listed there. So when people get upset that a Power 5 conference champion that's undefeated can't get left out, tell me who you're taking out in that scenario.
That's the question. Let's get through the top 6 here, and then we can continue this type of discussion about what you would do potentially with an undefeated Wisconsin. I assume we're going to start at the top, as we typically do at number 1, and it is the Georgia Bulldogs once again in a stern test coming up for Kirby Smart's team on the road at Auburn on Saturday. The Tigers, as these guys have talked about, number 10. Chance for a top 10 win for Georgia. Chance for Auburn to get firmly into the playoff discussion. I assume Alabama's going to be just behind Georgia, and they are. Crimson Tide sitting at number 2 despite a plethora of injuries at the linebacker position, which could be ominous for their next few games.
It definitely could be, and obviously with Auburn coming down the road, and they finally buffered their schedule a little bit by beating LSU, a ranked opponent they could add to it, Mississippi State this week.
And then Auburn, and then potentially, should they get through those games, a meeting with Georgia, and probably by the end, the schedule would be just fine. At number 3, Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, the showdown coming with Miami on Saturday night. So the Irish hold firm at number 3, and at number 4 is Clemson. So we don't see any big change in the top 4, and despite Oklahoma's victory over Oklahoma State, which was in thrilling fashion, the Sooners not yet moving into the top 4, but knocking on the door at number 5, just waiting on somebody to stumble now. And then, oh, by the way, they better make sure they don't stumble themselves, right? Yeah,
Yep.
5 versus 6 on Saturday, too.